I can draw different values. By keeping x constant, by keeping this x constant at particular value, I can see different range of values for y. You understand?
Okay.
By for one particular value of x, you can see a complete range of values for y. That range is between what? Between 0 to 255. You understand? So the space y, for different space y's, I'm going to get different brightness values. That's what we learned in the last class.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so that's one doubt. All right. Anybody, anything else? Any other doubts on these topics? So yesterday we started discussing about the signals and systems. So I introduced you to the two fundamental signals. One is a continuous time signal, another one is a discrete time waveform. And I also mentioned about the need for processing the signals using computers. So naturally, computers are going to play an important role for signal processing. So naturally, you need to convert. The computers are not compatible, okay, in using analog signals or continuous signals. So naturally, you need to convert it into a digital form. For that, you need to discretize the signal. And I mentioned about a particular technique called sampling. Okay, by switching on and off a switch like this. Okay, you can convert a continuous time waveform into a discrete time waveform like this. And we also learned how we can represent the discrete time waveform under 4 different modes. One you call it as a functional mode, another one you call it as a tabular mode, another one you call it as a sequence mode, another one you call it as a pictorial mode. Okay, all 4 modes are same. So only way the representation is different. Okay, we have different forms of representing signals. And also we learned that the independent variable can be anything. Okay, it can be time, it can be space, it can be altitude. Some examples we see. Okay, so then we discussed something about a system. Somebody defined it beautifully system yesterday. Who is that? Can somebody define what is a system is? Yeah. What is a system, man?
A medium which performs all the functions.
Okay. The medium which performs all the function. I'm looking at the chat. Yesterday Nitish told me, sir, please look at the chat. So any answer in the chat? No. For a system, okay.
It is a collection of devices that operate an input signal to produce an output signal.
Okay. I got it. Good. So it's a collection of devices. So, but the key point I said, I hope you can recall that there is an intended, desired purpose. Okay, that's important. Are you getting the point? My point clearly? Okay, so there is an intended system. It's a collection of devices that operate on input signal. Okay, that produce an output signal. But the key point is when you are connecting these devices in order to create a system, there should have some meaning. Okay, there should be some kind of purpose. For all systems, there will be some purpose. There will be some kind of intended, desired results that you are looking for. The output may be like this. This is what maybe you may be desiring. Okay, so in that case, so you need to design systems accordingly. Now let us move ahead. Okay. So we also discussed about some examples like a transmitting system, a channel, a receiver. Okay, all these we discussed. Okay, so now this is another example. So you look at this acoustic pressure variations over a microphone. What happens? You get some voltage signals, and that voltage signal passes through some electronics. Okay, maybe you may be amplifying it. And this semester you are studying 2 key subjects, I think. One is electronic circuits. Okay, learn the subject in a thorough professional way. So again, it's an important subject. And also you have circuit theory. Okay, circuit theory, I hope you are learning this semester. These 2 subjects are one-to-one connected with signals. Okay, a good understanding of signals can help you to look into the circuit theory subject as well as electronic circuit subjects in a very what you call systematic way. Okay, systematic way you can understand the subject. So once the amplification is done, you get the processed voltage and you are again giving it to ADC. So what is ADC? What is ADC?
Analog digital converter.
Analog to digital converter.
Excellent. So analog to digital converter is ADC. and using that, in fact, you are converting it to a digital waveform and you are giving it to the computer and you are storing the data right now. Okay. So now as I already told you, any system, for example, in the previous case, we are seeing a transmitter system. Okay, the transmitting system can have many subsystems. So these subsystems can be, for example, in this case, when you are talking through a microphone, you may be amplifying it, okay, and then you are giving it to an ADC, and again you may be employing a microcontroller to modulate the signal. Okay, so a microcontroller or a small mini computer to modulate the signal, and then you'll be giving it to a DAC, a digital to analog signal, and then maybe you may be amplifying it again, and then you may be transmitting it through the antenna, okay, in the form of an electromagnetic fields, okay, electromagnetic signal, and you may be transmitting it to a long range, okay, and then again with the help of an antenna you may be receiving it. So in all telecommunication systems, in fact, we'll be studying this communication theory. Okay, so super heterodyne is some subsystem, and then you'll be giving it to an ADC, then again a demodulator, and from there again a DAC. Through an amplifier, you'll be allowing that signal to pass to a speaker, and you will be listening to the sound. Okay, so listening to the speech or sound or anything. Okay, so that's this is another way of looking at this. What do you call subsystems? Okay, maybe simply you can write one block like transmitter, and then you can create your subsystems. What is there inside the transmitter? Again, you can view it like subsystems. Okay, you call it a subsystem. So all these you'll be learning under different subjects. Okay, but right now just get a feel of what exactly a subsystem is under a main system. So we have been talking about some systems. Okay. So there are the signal systems application is more on electrical domain, mechanical domain, optical domain, acoustic domain, biological domain, financial domain. All these applications are there. Okay, but primarily as an electronics and instrumentation engineer, you may be more oriented towards electromechanical systems like motors and all. Okay, electromechanical systems. Then electrical systems like RC network and all RLC circuitry and all those, as well as electronic circuits. Okay, and then some mechanical systems also you'll be interested in. So one important point I'd like to say here is, if you look at the systems that we are talking about, okay, we are primarily talking about one particular system called linear time invariant systems. We'll learn about it. Right now, don't worry about all these terminologies, time invariant and all. Just keep it in mind, whatever that we are learning under the undergraduate curriculum is all basically LTI systems. Okay, at the postgraduate level, you'll be learning about non-linear time varying systems, postgraduate level. Okay, and maybe if you move further, in fact, you'll be learning about non-linearity, how to handle non-linearity, how to control non-linearity, and all more kind of research as well as postgraduate work. But right now, we are more bothered about at the undergrad level. We are interested in learning about linear time invariant systems. And under this linear time invariant systems, we are primarily focusing on electrical, mechanical, some electronics, as well as some process systems in your curriculum. You are electronics instrumentation engineers now, so you'll be learning about process systems also, chemical process systems. So all these systems basically, what kind of a system? Systems are all what system?
Linear time invariant.
Linear time invariant systems. Very good, very good. So we are focusing only on. So you should then, in your mind right now, there will be a question. Sir, what is LTI? I'm interested, I'm curious. Okay, we will learn about it. Don't worry, we will understand it thoroughly. Okay, and the tools that we are going to use in this particular subject, various kinds of mathematical tools we'll be using. Okay, all those tools. Okay, we will be learning about tools like some classic tools like Fourier analysis, Okay. Under this, you will be learning about continuous time Fourier series. Then you learn about something called continuous time Fourier transform. Then you will learn about a discrete time Fourier series. And there is one-to-one connection. Easily, once you understand one particular thing, easily you will be in a position to shift gears and to learn the other tools comfortably. Okay, you'll be learning about these mathematical tools. All these are LTI, linear time invariant tools. This toolkit is essential for all engineers. So whatever you are learning in this subject, you will be applying it in different domains. Okay, that you always keep that in mind. So a thorough understanding, that's why I'm putting a lot of emphasis. Okay, a good understanding about all this will help you a lot. So Fourier analysis, in fact, you will be learning, and you might have already learned about Laplace transforms. Another mathematical tool. Okay, then you will be learning about something like Z transforms. So for Laplace transform is connected to continuous time systems. Okay, continuous time signals, continuous time systems. And Z transformation is connected to discrete time signals, discrete time signals and discrete time systems. So you have to understand clearly that, okay, there are a lot of tools that are there, okay, and it is essential for you to master these tools. And the fourth one, in fact, you will be learning about something called frequency response analysis. It's a very powerful tool. But it is connected to Fourier transformation. So then another particular tool, in fact, you'll be learning something called convolution. All these are mathematics. Okay, convolution tool. So understand very clearly that for LTI system analysis, convolution tool you'll be learning in unit 2. Okay. And you'll be learning about Fourier analysis in unit 3. And some part of discrete time Fourier transform in unit 4. Laplace transformation, in fact, we assume that you'll be knowing, so we will not be handling that. But I'll give you some brief idea, some basic idea about it. And Z transformation you'll be learning at unit 4. Okay, all these transformation and mathematical tools, whatever that you're going to learn in this particular subject, everything is related to LTI. So that's why LTI is important. Okay, this is all these tools you'll be employing. Okay, but the question that comes to your mind is, so when it comes to nonlinear systems, sir, shall we apply all this? Laplace transform, Fourier analysis, Z transformations? No, definitely not. Okay, so you require a completely different set of tools to handle nonlinear systems. Completely a different set of tools. Okay, completely a different set of tools. So for nonlinear systems, this approach is not really going to help you. Okay, keep that in mind. Okay. But the one important point I have to say here is the real world, most of the systems are all non-linear in nature. Okay, so in that case, why do we need to study LTIs, sir? But the real world systems are all non-linear. Why we are studying the linear time invariant systems? Primarily because one thing is it's quite easy. Okay, and then another thing is most of the systems, non-linear systems, you can linearize. So as the tools are all easy, and it is possible for you to linearize a non-linear system over certain operating conditions, we are now employing LTI systems as a very powerful tool for studies. Okay, so now look at this. There is a mass and spring damper here. Okay, mass, there is a mass, and in physics you might have studied about this spring. Okay, this is one classic example of mechanical systems. Okay, so if you look at so if you look at any mass spring damping system, a spring is there, a mass is there. Now it's more like a vehicle system. So you have to understand that spring constant as magnet speed. Okay, so if you apply some force, the system is going to vibrate. How it looks? Shall we see some kind of video like thing? Yeah. Look at this. Look at this. The mass spring damping system, clearly you can see here, the mass is, see, I can apply force here. Okay, I can apply some force. Okay. So if you look at this graph, you are seeing something what? Some external force, if you're going to apply, that will be represented like this. Acceleration, position, and the velocity, they are all changing. Okay, so you can see immediately the movement of this particular mass is more like a sinusoidal waveform. Okay, so you can clearly see. There is a difference between position, velocity, and acceleration. Right now, don't bother. That's more like a time-shifted version of the original waveform. It's more like that. But when we are studying differential equations, you will understand it much more clearly. But just get a feel. Okay, the mass spring damping systems, when they are operating, you get the position, velocity, acceleration in terms of a signal, and it is more like a sinusoidal waveform. Okay, so that's the idea. In fact, you need to imagine right now. Okay. So that's what I'm telling. So the same, see, almost all LTI systems connected to mechanical systems, mechanical domain, okay, can be represented, all LTI. Imagine in the entire world, whatever systems you have, mechanical systems, if it is LTI, okay, you can linearize it and you can bring it to an LTI mode. Then you can model it only with mass, spring, and damping. It's a very powerful idea. Okay. So what I'm saying, all mechanical systems, okay, from the mechanical domain, whatever systems you have, it can be mathematically modeled with only 3 components. What are they? Mass, spring, and damping. Very powerful idea. Can somebody help me out? Okay. What is the analogy for electrical systems? Can you imagine that? I want to represent electrical systems. I require 3 components to represent it mathematically. Like in the case of mechanical system, 3 components, mass, spring, damping. Can you imagine 3 components for electrical systems?
Resistor.
Excellent, good. Tell me that. Yeah. Number 1 is resistor. Number 2 is inductor.
Voltage.
Yeah,
Voltage.
No, inductor. Inductor. Voltage is related to what?
Capacitor.
The third one is capacitance. Okay, you have 3 elements.
Capacitor.
Yeah, capacitor, inductor, and resistor. Okay, you can represent all kinds of your systems, all electrical systems. It's a wonderful idea. All electrical systems. Okay, with only resistive, inductive, and capacitive elements. So you can give your input signal, some VI input, and we can study the output voltage across the capacitor or something, and thereby you can do a complete, what you call, system dynamical studies. Okay, system dynamical studies. In fact, most of you are quite familiar with applying KCL and KVL. Okay, Kirchhoff voltage law, Kirchhoff current law for RLC circuits. By last semester, you might have learned. This semester also, you'll be learning that circuit theory. Okay, in circuit theory or network theory, you'll be learning this thoroughly again. So put a lot of effort in understanding this RLC circuitry. Why? Why it is important, RLC circuitry? Can somebody help me out? Why it is important? Why it is important, RLC? Put in words, anybody? See, keep talking, okay? Chatting is different. Chatting through words in dialogue boxes is different from opening your mouth and conveying your idea, your thinking process. Okay, maybe right or wrong, don't bother. Okay, always try to, only by repeatedly talking, we can refine our thoughts. That's my belief. Okay, only by explaining ideas to others, only by trying to explain things clearly with your own words, you will be in a position to understand things in a clear way. So tell me why RLC is so important. I told you just now. I told you. Why
Used
it's so
in various
please tell. Yeah, proceed. Good.
used in various power lines, various home domestic appliance, current.
Okay, that is right. But one key point I told you just now. What is that? Can you recall that? No, the voice is not clear.
Systems.
Please again. Yeah, please tell. Your voice is not clear, man. I think you are giving the right answer. Please tell me again.
So it will receive signal.
Because every
Electrical systems.
Yeah, please. One of you. I'm waiting.
Sorry,
Yeah.
because it's a dynamic electric systems.
Dynamic electrical systems. One answer. Another answer. Somebody else is talking. Who said?
This is signals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it can be represented in the form of LTE.
It can be represented in the form of LTI. Okay. Any other answer? One key
We
point
can
you are forgetting.
represent all electrical systems.
That's the right answer. Very good, very good, very good. That's what I'm looking for. That's a key point. But why I'm saying it is, hey, just imagine, this is a very big word, and what I'm uttering is not a simple thing. Just imagine you have so many mechanical systems in the world. Okay, there are so many mechanical, including cars, autonomous cars, robots. Okay, CNC machines, welding machines, so many mechanical things. Likewise, if you look at electrical systems, somebody has mentioned power systems are there, transmitting systems, motors, okay, so electronic components, okay. There are so many things involved in electrical systems. The wonderful thing is you can represent all these systems in the form of an RLC circuitry, a combination, okay. It need not be only RLC. You can have various combinations of it, okay. You may have RL like this. If there is a combination. The combination of RLC circuitries can fetch you all kinds of electrical system is very powerful idea. So a good understanding of mass spring damper and RLC circuitry is going to help you a lot, okay, in studying different kinds of systems. Okay, so you need to put some effort. That's why in understanding this, you understand the importance of it. Okay, that's why I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this. So that's one idea. So then the next one. So look at this. I have a tank system also. Okay, this also, if you look at this, is a mass spring damper. We have seen that there is an input signal. The input signal can be a force. Okay, and the force you may be getting a change in position, velocity, acceleration, like that. That's what in fact I shown you that video, small video. Okay, a mass spring damp system. You apply force, there is a position velocity, and the amplitude, that is acceleration change. Likewise, in a tank level system, if you look at this tank level system, I may be varying the input flow rate, okay, and there will be a corresponding change in the output flow rate, Q naught. This is Q in. Now what happens? The input flow rate is suddenly increased like this. The tank system is now responding in such a fashion that the output flow rate is now changing like this. Okay, you can study that. So it's a system. Tank is a system. In fact, instrumentation engineers will be learning a lot under the subject process systems, okay, process control and systems. So wherein you'll be learning about, in all chemical industries, you'll be using heavily these kind of tanks, wherein some chemicals will flow inside, some chemicals will be getting out, okay, and you need to mathematically model it. So for learning that and understanding about the dynamics involved, okay, you can easily compare this tank level system with an RLC circuitry comfortably. Okay, so we learn that. Okay, but likewise for cell phone systems, if you look at cell phone, somebody is talking in the cell phone, and there is a cell phone system, and some sound is going out. Okay, so how the signal is varying, how the system is transforming that signal. All these you'll be learning under the cell phone systems. It's the communication systems. A communication design engineer will be more bothered about that. So you can understand all different branches of engineering, okay, are converging under this one domain called signals and systems beautifully. Okay, so a thorough understanding of the subject is going to help you a lot. Keep that in mind always. So likewise, a cell phone system, if you look at how a cell phone, the system is going to look like, as I already told you earlier, there are subsystems involved. Okay, if I open this cell phone system, so I've written here, cell phone system. This can be opened up and you can see there are various things involved. Okay, so the original cell phone, whatever you have it in hand, is like this. Through that, the electromagnetic signal is going to go out to a tower nearby, and from that tower through optical fibers it goes to another tower somewhere else, and again it will be electromagnetic signal, it will be converting, and it will be passed on to the cell phone, and the person may be hearing the sound. Okay, there are a lot of complex technologies involved. Okay, communication subject, if you're going to study, you learn this. The technology is not so easy. Okay, it's a complex technology, and you need to mathematically model everything. When you are talking about mathematical models, systems theory is going to help you. Again, whatever we are going to learn, differential equations, Z transform, Laplace transform, Fourier transform, everything is going to help you in mathematically modeling it. Okay, you have to understand it. So you need to apply it immediately for different systems that you can study. So it's a composite system. Okay, so the entire cell phone system with subsystems you can see here. Okay, that's what I would like to convey here. So, and also you can compare your tank level systems with a RC network like this. So you can see the liquid is stored here, stored. Immediately in your mind you can think, in a capacitor also you'll be storing charges. Okay, so it is more like this tank level system is more like acting like a simple capacitive element. Okay, so easily you can visualize that. Energy is stored. That's what energy in terms of liquid here. Okay, there is definitely a pressure here, hydrostatic pressure they call it. Because of that, you get this flow rate out. The same way in the capacitor also there is a potential difference. Because of this potential difference only you get the current. In the same manner you get the flow rate. So how do you then relate? The flow rate, you can relate it with what? In the electrical system?
Rate, sir. Charge rate. dq by dt.
Right, current. Okay, the current is what is. So the same way the potential, the head, the liquid level can be related to what in the electrical system? The level in the tank is related to anybody? The level in the tank is related to what?
Potential difference.
Potential difference. That's the voltage. Okay, very good. Very good. So easily you can visualize it clearly. So whatever you are going to learn in RC network, okay, RLC circuitry, can be compared, okay, with mechanical systems, chemical process systems, and electromechanical systems. Can you give an example for electromechanical systems? Anybody? Can you come up with an example for electromechanical systems? Anybody? Electromechanical system means, yeah? What is that?
Electric motors.
Electric motor, that's it, very good. Electric motors is classic examples for generators, electric motors. They are all examples for what? Electromechanical systems, wherein you will get both the RLC circuitry as well as mass spring damper. Why? In the case of winding, when you are passing current through the motor, so the winding is going to have some resistance, it's going to have some inductance, okay? Then you will be modeling the winding part as an RL circuitry, and then you will be connecting it to a load, okay? There will be a shaft connected, a mechanical component involved, okay? There will be some resistance, there will be some kind of mass element attached to it. So naturally you can imagine it's an a composite electromechanical system is what we are talking about in terms of electric motors and generators. So an understanding about RLC circuitry and mass spring damper can provide you a lot of insights when you are going to mathematically model the system. Okay, so that's what in fact I have written here. Now let us proceed. Okay, so we are talking about something called ADC again and again. Okay, let us now get some idea, some feel about it. Okay, you will be learning about the design of ADC under the subject called linear integrated circuits. Okay, later on, maybe this semester or next semester, I think, fourth semester you'll be learning that. Okay, LIC, linear integrated circuits, wherein you'll be getting a complete circuit-oriented analysis of this ADC circuitry and DAC circuitry. But just now, right now, just I'm trying to give a feel of it. Okay, so in the analog systems, and we would like to work with digital systems. How do you move from here to here? So there is an interfacing mechanism. That's where the ADC comes. Okay, so once you work some signals in the discrete time domain, and if you want to come back again, okay, to the analog domain again, then you need to employ DAC. Keep this in mind when you are learning in LIC, ADC and DAC. Put some emphasis, put some effort in understanding it thoroughly. Primarily because in almost all core industries, okay, we are now working with digital systems predominantly. Okay, analog systems applications are also there, but still many of the industries are now moving towards digital systems. So they need to interact or interface with the real world through the ADC. So a good understanding about ADC and DAC will always help you a lot. Okay, so in that case, in terms of signals perspective, how I can visualize it? Look at this. So you have a continuous time waveform, as I told you earlier, some waveform like this. Okay, this is a continuous time waveform. This is what you are getting from the real world. So from the physical world, you are interacting. How do you get the signal like this? How do you get the signal in area? From the physical world, how do you infer the signal? You need to employ sensors. Okay. So you need to employ transducers or sensors to gather information about the physical phenomena, and then you'll be getting this kind of waveforms, the voltage waveforms, the current waveforms you'll be getting. For example, if it is a thermocouple, the thermocouple is going to give an output voltage waveform based on what? Temperature. So when the temperature varies, this voltage signal is going to take a definite pattern, okay, with respect to time. So that signal is, let us imagine it's like this. It's continuous waveform. Now what I'm doing, I'm sampling it in order to get, see, this is what I'm talking about ADC. What's happening inside, I'm telling. Okay. So the sampler will sample. This is the sample rate, samples I'll be getting. Original continuous time waveform, I'm sampling it. Then what I'm doing, look at the quantizer, the key idea. Quantizer. Look at the amplitude here. Okay, in the amplitude section, this is a discrete signal. I'm discretized in terms of what? The independent variable, the time in this case. Okay, the independent variable I have discretized with the help of a sampler. Now I'm quantizing. Quantizing, I'm doing it where? I'm doing it in the y-axis. You understand here? Like this. Quantizing the data. When I am quantizing, what I am trying to do is, in terms of bits, I'll be doing it. Bits means what? For example, if it is a 2-bit ADC, how many possible combination I'll be getting? Binary 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. You understand clearly what I'm saying? So in that case, my original continuous time waveform with varying amplitudes like this, how many possible values I can have at this junction? Can somebody help me out?
N number of values.
What is that N? No, N is wrong. N is the index.
Spaces.
Okay. No, not spaces. You are wrong. Please think. You take a minute and think. The original continuous time waveform, the amplitude varies from this point now.
With time.
This point. If you look at here. With respect, no, I'm talking about the amplitude, not time. How many possible amplitude values I'll be having at this junction after quantizing with a 2-bit ADC? Anybody clear? Then you understand it clearly, what I am telling? So this is the signal. Okay, now I am discretizing it. Discretizing this width, this width depends on what? The sampling time. I'm not bothered about that. I'm obtaining this waveform after sampling. Okay, what kind of waveform I'll be getting after sampling? This is the index n, this is x of n. I'll be getting these samples. Everybody clear with this? Okay, till this point it's clear to you. Now what I am asking you to is, after sampling the first stage, I will be getting my signal like this. Now these amplitudes are all continuous, keep that in mind. So these values are all different amplitudes you can have. Okay, it's not quantized. Now what I am doing, I am deliberately quantizing my waveform. What I am doing, only 4 bits, 2 bits. 2 bits means totally 4 possible values only I can have. 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. Now what is the problem here? Can you visualize the problem? Can you visualize the problem clearly? For example, I may have a waveform here, I may have a waveform here, I may have a waveform here. Okay, if you look at this signal, the amplitude, this amplitude is different from this amplitude, and this is different from this amplitude. The original continuous amplitude domain, okay, y-axis domain, I may have different values for all these signals. But now as I have quantized, all these entire range of values will be given a value only 0, 0. This is a very powerful idea. Okay, the entire range of all these amplitudes between this range is going to enjoy only 0, 1 pattern. Whatever be the amplitude, I will say only 0, 1. Whatever be the amplitude between this range, okay, can you see the range? I will be calling it as the entire signal. All these signals in between this range. Take this range. Okay, this range I have drawn here. All these values we are going to have only 0, 1 as the output. So this is called quantizing. So now not only I am discretizing the time, I am discretizing the amplitude also. So this is a very powerful idea. Can you understand this? Anybody? Can you repeat this, what I said right now? It's an important idea. Anybody would like to repeat this, what I said just now? Arunmozhi Varman? What you understood? Anybody? Muralidharan, Vinay, Praveen, Ramkumar, yeah, R. Ramkumar. Just try to open your mouth and tell man what you understood from this. What is the problem you are seeing here? The problem is the range of values, okay, between any two range. For example, these two range is going to be only 0, 0. All the amplitudes will be given value 0, 0. So you are missing some information. That's the problem. You may lose some information. You may miss some information by going for a 4-bit ADC or an 8-bit ADC. You may have better resolution. Better resolution in the sense you can approximate your original amplitude to a better level. Okay, that's why people go for some higher number of bits of ADC. Normally people use 12-bit ADC and all. If you use 12-bit ADC, then you can understand so many quantization level you can have. If it is 4-bit ADC, how many possibilities I have? Anybody help me out? If it is 3-bit ADC, how many possible quantization values
Only
I can
3,
have?
sir.
Yeah, 2 for 3.
3 values.
Huh? 3-bit. 3-bit means what? 0, 0, 0, 0,
0.
8, sir.
Totally I have 8.
Sir.
Okay, totally I have 8 possibilities of values. So a better resolution is what I'm going to get by quantizing the waveform. Amplitude I'm quantizing. Keep that in mind. So this is more like a discretized version. Okay, discrete amplitude, discrete time. Both are discretized. Keep that in mind. Okay, so you have to understand it clearly. Now look at this. So far we have learned this. Okay, up to this. Now look at this diagram. You can easily visualize it. Please take a look at this diagram for a minute. So initially, you are sampling the waveform. When you are sampling, I'm going to sample at this instant, at this instant, at this instant, at this instant. Okay, I got 4 samples. So what is written here? Read it clearly. It is a continuous value, continuous time signal. Continuous value indicates here amplitude. Continuous time indicate time, independent variable. Now the second stage, in the sampling stage, what happens? You get a continuous value for the amplitude. The amplitude, whatever sample you're going to get now, that value is not being quantized yet. So whatever value you're going to get, you can write that down. It may be minus 0.5, it may be 1.2, this may be minus 0.2, it may be 2.3. Whatever value you're going to get in the original waveform, you're going to get it. So that's why it's continuous value, discrete time signal. But what happens? The time instants are discretized, independent variable. Right? You get a new index n. The next stage, what you are doing? You are quantizing it. So these are all the bits I'm talking about: 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 1. When I'm going to quantize it, I'm going to convert this analog values 2.5, 1.3, all these into bits length. Okay, that's why I'm calling it as encoding. Okay, I'm getting bits like this: 111, 001, 111, 011, for example, indicates bits of data. Now, but I'll be losing some information, primarily because of what? The number of bits that we are using. For example, it may be 2-bit or 3-bit or 4-bit or 8-bit. That is going to add a restriction or a constraint on the original waveform. Okay, the range of values are going to enjoy the same value. The range of amplitude, they are going to have the same bits, 00 or 11 or 001, something like that. So you have to understand it very clearly. So once you understand this, the continuous time waveform is getting converted into a discrete value continuous time signal. Okay, that is what, in fact, a digital signal you call it. Okay, normally discrete value, discrete time signal, you can call it as digital waveform. Okay, but you can also have pulses like this, original waveforms. This is continuous. Okay, in terms of time, it is continuous within this range. Okay, but the original, the amplitude is fixed, 111001 discretized. Okay, so that's why it's called discrete value continuous time signal. So the process, the entire process, if you're going to look at, it's like this. You should not forget, as an electronic instrumentation engineer, you should not forget this diagram. Okay, from the sensor, you're going to give it to an analog pre-filter. It may be a filter or it may be an amplifier, whatever it is. And then ADC, then the DSP. DSP is what? A computer or a microcontroller or a microprocessor. Okay, and then you are giving it to DAC again and again. You'll be doing it analog output. So we are bothered about this ADC, how we are going to sample the signal, how I'm going to quantize the signal. All these are quite important. Okay. With this background, okay, let us now move ahead. I'll be introducing you to the today's class. We'll learn about this signal analysis and synthesis in next class. Okay, signal analysis. I will take it to the next class. And synthesis, I'll be taking to the next class. But today, my objective is to introduce you to 2 basic signals. In another 10 minutes, I'll introduce you to 2 basic signals. One, you call it as a delta signal. There are a few signals which are quite important, okay, when it comes to signals in systems. They call it as a building block. You should have a thorough professional understanding. Okay, I'm again emphasize on this. Building blocks. These signals are building block signals are number one is a super signal, super important. Impulse. Super important. I put a lot of emphasis on this. Super important. Then you have sinusoidal signal. Sinusoidal signal. And this is also super important. Then you have unit step signals. Step signals. Then you have something very you might be familiar with already. It's called as an exponential signal. Exponential signal. Most of the LTI systems, okay, only will be working with mostly impulse, sinusoidal, step signals, and exponential signals. Okay. Apart from this, you also have ramp signals, okay, rectangular pulses. They are connected. Rectangular pulses are connected to impulse. Okay. Ramp, then triangular waveforms. Only this. Again and again and again we'll be learning this. Okay. So impulse and the sinusoidal signals. In fact, you'll be learning this in tomorrow's class. Okay. But one important point is these two signals are called basis signals or basis functions. A signal can be imagined like a function, okay, primarily because f is a function of time t or x as a function of time t. When you write for different values of time, you are plotting the signal. Okay, for different values of time, you are plotting f of t. So naturally, this signal f of t or x of t, they are all some function of time. That's why that function is the time variable is the independent variable I said. Okay, it may be f of s also, space. Okay, space or time independent variables can be. Now these signals you call it as the basis signals. Why it is called basis signal? Primarily because this is one idea you should not forget as an engineer. Okay, why it is called is basis means what? They are the building blocks. Imagine like a brick. You are going to build your house only using this. You are going to build all your signals. Okay, all your signals using. You can decompose any signal in the world. You can decompose. And the constituent parts can be impulse or it can be sinusoidal. It's a very powerful idea, sinusoidal signal. The sinusoidal signals can also be called another way I can put it is complex sinusoidal signals. We'll learn about it next class. Complex sinusoidal. So naturally, impulses are important and complex sinusoidal signals are important. Using these two signals, you can create any signal. You can synthesize any waveform. Using these two signals, impulse signals and sinusoidal signals. That's why we need to learn thoroughly about these two signals. In today's class, in another 10 minutes, I'll be introducing that signal and then we'll wind up. Okay, just another 5 to 10 minutes. Look at this. I hope everyone can. I hope I expect you to concentrate now for another 5 to 10 minutes. A little bit is quite important. That's why I'm emphasizing. Now look at this paper. So this is the first signal, the classic signal called delta T signal. This you call it as an impulse signal. Look at how we have defined it. The definition seems to be a little confusing, but don't bother. Just try to think about it. I'm saying delta T signal, an impulse signal. Okay. It exists only for a time t equal to 0. It's very powerful. time t equal to 0, you cannot imagine. Okay, how 0 is something we imagine it is a void. Okay, nothing is there. But when you are defining it ideally, okay, when you are defining the signal ideally, the signal exists for 0 time with an amplitude 1. Okay, that's the idea. So when you are defining the signal, I am defining it something like this. For time t equal to 0, the signal is undefined is what I am saying. Primarily because it is not feasible for us to tell exactly that at no time the signal reaches value 1. Okay, that's not feasible. Some energy that has to come out in no time. That's not feasible. So that's why the definition part we are saying undefined. And the signal is 0 for all other values of time. It's here 0, here 0, here 0. All other values, the time t, it is 0. So naturally, but something is going to help us. That's called the integration part. But when I am going to integrate this signal from minus infinity to plus infinity, okay, delta t dt, I get the area to be equal to 1. So you need to use this integration formula. You should not forget this. I'm computing the area of the signal, delta t, and that value is going to be equal to 1. That's the first understanding. Okay, so keep this in mind. The second point is, if I'm going to multiply that integration, okay, let us imagine I'm going to look at the waveform delta t. The t is equal to 0, it's going to exist. Now if I'm going to shift the signal by some t1 amount, where will be the signal existing? The same one. This is time t equal to 0, the value is 1. This is delta t. What will be delta t minus t1? Can somebody help me out? Where it will be located? The signal. It's going to locate at t equal to t1. You understand? There is a time shift from 0. It's now got shifted to t1. That's what this delta t minus t1 indicates. We will learn more about time shifting in later classes. But right now, just imagine that the original time waveform delta t got shifted to a new location t1. That is what this thing represents. Delta t minus t. Now I would like to perform some operation. I'm multiplying the amplitude with a. What do I get? A into 1, what do I get? I'm going to get a. So look at the waveform a into delta t minus t1. It will look like this. So now I'll pose you a very simple question. What is a delta t minus t2? Can you draw it in your notebook? Easily you can draw. How it looks? At time t equal to t2, the signal value is going to be a. That's all. If I'm going to put a c into delta t minus t3, at time some t3, the delta value is going to be, the amplitude is going to be c. Instead of 1, I'm going to have the amplitude c. You understand? So that's the basic idea. Okay. Now I'm going to define a rectangular pulse waveform. A pulse waveform looks like this. The value of the amplitude is 1 by a. For any amplitude mod time t less than a by 2. So mod means what? I am talking about both minus 1. For example, t is equal to 1 means minus 1. I am also talking about plus 1. Okay, that's what mod indicates. So naturally, for any value between a by 2, the value is 1 by a means how the signal will look like. Easily you can visualize. It's going to look like this. Can you see it clearly? If this, what is this value? This value is going to be minus a by 2. What is minus t by 2? And this value is going to be t by 2. So between these values, the value is going to take this area. This value is going to be a, and this amplitude is going to be 1 by e. Okay. So for any unit rectangular pulse, the area is going to be 1. If this is 1 by a, in order to get one area, what will be the formula? I have to multiply it with some number in order to get 1. What do I need to do? I have to multiply the x-axis should be a. That's why the width of the pulse of this rectangular pulse is e. That's why the area is. Okay. So naturally, this signal I have defined like this, and this delta t value will be equal to this QT at the limit when A approaches 0. Look at this. Can you see it? When the A approaching 0, what happens? Originally, the pulse width is like this. Area is equal to 1. I want to maintain the same area, but this A has to be reduced. When A reduces, what will happen? 1 by A has to increase. Then only I will get the 1. The area 1. And at A tends to 0, what do I get? I get the impulse. Can you see it clearly? Can somebody tell this again, what I said? Sharan, Shivram, Siddhartha, Varalakshmi, Vignesh. Anybody? Satyanarayana?
The
Dhanush?
impulse is maximum, the area approaches 0. So,
Not area, the width.
Yeah.
The width of the rectangular pulse, when it approaches 0, the impulse will go to the maximum value 1. Okay, it's going more like an infinity. Then only you get to this 1. Okay, so you have to, ideally you have to visualize this. Okay, this theoretically it's not feasible. This is not feasible. At time t equal to 0, you will not get 1. Okay, but you will be working signal, you will be working with a rectangular signals like this only. This is what more practical. Okay, you can generate these signals in the lab, but you cannot generate these signals in the lab. But for mathematical analysis purpose, we are using these signals. Keep that in mind. So you can also represent the impulse signals not only like a rectangular pulse, you can also represent it like a Gaussian pulse like this, or a sinc function like this. Okay, these two we will learn by tomorrow, but just keep it in mind. Okay, I just show you one simple demo. If I run this, look at this. This is a rectangular pulse I am interested in. Okay. Can you see it? This one. This is what I am interested in. Rectangular pulse. Now what I am going to do is I am going to vary the area. The pulse signal area I am changing. See here. If I am going to that is small a, that small a I am going to vary. If I am going to vary that a, what happens? I'm going to reduce the a approaches 0. What happens? Anybody? When the a approaches 0, what happens? Look at
impulse
the
is 1.
look at
Impulse
this
will be
wave.
1, sir.
This look at this wave from rectangular pulse. Take a look at it. Initially the value is 1. Okay, it is looking like this rectangular pulse. Now when a approaches 0, gradually look at what's happened. Gradually this length is going to increase. Okay, this length is going to increase, and this width is going to come down. Okay, this width is going to come down. The amplitude is going to increase. I'm approaching 0, 0.7, 6. See, now it is increasing. It's approaching like an impulse. Can you see it? You can intuitively, you can visualize it clearly. Rectangular pulses will become impulse when A approaches 0. With that, okay, let us stop today's class. Okay, now you have any queries? I'm willing to answer. Yeah, any queries? So today what we have learned, can somebody summarize? I'm asking you guys, okay, open your mouth and talk. What is the problem, man? You have to discuss, man. This is your class, you are learning. Everything is yours, sir. It's not mine. Okay, I'm whatever career that you are going to have, it is your career. You need to be more proactive and talk. Okay, discuss with me. Now tell me what you have learned today. Can somebody summarize neatly? Put in words. Summarize.
We learnt about ADC.
Very good. Good. Anush, yes.
Then quantization.
Very good. Quantization. If I'm going to use 2 bits of ADC, how many quantization I'll be having? Anush?
4.
4. Good. Very good. So then the entire amplitude range is restricted or constrained to only 4 ranges, 4 values. You understand?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You'll be losing some information. Very good. Then proceed. Then what else we learned? We learned the basics of impulse signals. Okay, so we have an idea about an impulse now. How the signal looks like is what I have shown it to you. And you can also represent an impulse waveform using a rectangular pulse also. With A approaching 0, limit A approaching 0, you can see how a rectangular pulse with width will become an impulse signal. Okay, with that I'll wind up today's class. I'll stop recording now. Okay.